आप देख रहे हैं वियानी टीवी, बात में दम है।
Today I'm going to tell you about applications of yoga in daily life. So let's just take the first slide, please. Can I have the regulator? Yeah. So this is our organization. All of you are welcome to come to Patanjali Yogpeeth in Haridwar. And when we talk about yoga research, and I'm very happy to be given the opportunity to talk about it here, a question which arises in our minds is, when did the best research in this area occur? How and by whom? And the answer is, it was by the ancient sages or rishis of India. They did it when? Thousands of years ago. What was their laboratory? They had no laboratory. It was an experiential science, like you all experienced OM or FA meditation now. And they used their own bodies, their own minds, and passed it on so that we all have the knowledge today, either by word of mouth or by etchings on palm leaves. And so we have science which can be actually monitored in the laboratory through techniques like fMRI, NMR spectroscopy, and even at the cellular level looking at chromosomes. Nonetheless, being an experiential science, it has to be done using very simple techniques which allow us to observe what a person is feeling. So, observation, introspection. And in fact, there's an increasing interest when I discuss with my colleagues across the Atlantic, particularly in the North America, where we have several collaborations. They all say, increasingly turn more to qualitative analysis in yoga and meditation. It's very important. And so, in Yoga Day 2016, for the very first time, we did a survey. Surveys had been done in the US and in Australia to answer questions like, what kind of person is most likely to practice yoga? A man or a woman, educated or less educated, race, white or African American or whatever. But it was not done in India. Isn't that interesting? Our own science. So in 2016, Yoga Day, Patanjali Yogpeeth took the initiative, and we published it in this journal. All the references here are our publications. Any of you want any paper, write to me. And what did we find? We found a very different profile. While in the West, it was much more likely that the yoga practitioner would be white, so that doesn't arise here, a female, middle-aged, and very highly educated. In India, we found quite a different picture. Young, slightly more common in males, and possibly because they were young, 10 years or so of education. What was the reason in the West and in India? In all countries, the reason was to improve health. But as we looked at different age groups, we found students were doing it to improve their attention and memory. Children were doing it as a hobby. Older people were doing it as a spiritual practice. So I would urge all of you, on Yoga Day, don't just have programs. Conduct surveys like this. There are very few surveys in our country. Now we come to some applications, and stress is the topic I have taken up. Let's take up children first. This was done in a school called the Doon School, right up north in Uttarakhand, close to our organization. And we selected them because they were very cooperative. We had 90 pre-teen children, 10 to 12 years of age, 90, and we randomized them as two groups, a yoga group and a physical exercise group. What are the differences? One of the main differences is awareness. You can run on a treadmill and you can watch the TV. Can you watch the TV while you're doing yoga? No. Yoga is all about going inside. Many more differences. We measured around 26 variables, and as you can see, we published it in the Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and Mental Health. We looked at their physical well-being, their mental cognitive abilities, emotional stability, their academic performance, behavior with teachers, behavior with peers. The two groups were almost the same. there was only one difference. That was in their self-esteem, especially their academic self-esteem. We heard one of the speakers in the morning stressing how students get into stress at the time of exams, and even at the time of the 10th and 12th commit suicide. So it's very important to boost their self-esteem. Let's go further. We also take up children with certain disorders. Now, I've just given one example here. Duchenne muscular dystrophy, an inherited disorder. All boys in a family can be affected. It's an X-linked disorder. And by the age of 20, they're in a wheelchair. By the age of 30, they are dead. Tremendous stress to the child, tremendous stress to the family. Yoga did not bring about a cure, but it reduced the suffering and reduced the stress in the family. Moving on, let's say adults. So in adults, I'm going to really take up one problem, which is a big problem today. What is that? Obesity. It's an epidemic. And particularly in South Asia, that is India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, there is one type of obesity. Some people have thin limbs, but the weight only gathers around your waist. Have you seen people like this? Raise your hands if you have. Okay. So, typical example. I think they've shown a policeman here, where there's weight around his waist, but his arms and limbs are thin. Now, it's very dangerous if you have it packed among the organs. That's called the visceral fat. If it's just below the skin, that's called the subcutaneous fat. So we looked at it, particularly we looked at a molecule which is produced by fat tissue in the body called leptin. Leptin was first discovered in Rockefeller University in the US and in 1994. What's so special about it? It's produced by the fat itself. So whenever the fat in our body is increasing, it produces this molecule called leptin. What's so important about leptin? Leptin acts on our brain and says, stop eating. Now, whether we listen to the signal or not is a different matter. So we have a natural appetite suppressant. Now, we looked at a study where we compared yoga and walking. Both of them had a comparable change in body mass index and many other variables. But leptin increased significantly only in the yoga group, not in the walking group, after 15 days. And so we launched a nationwide campaign on Ram Navami Day, that is April last year, and we've covered so many states across India and union territories. And now I'm going to present data, 3-month follow-up of 1,224 in a yoga group and 793 in a group who had only diet control. Let's see the differences. So the BMI reduced significantly in the yoga group, but was also lower in the control group. Visceral fat, which is the most dangerous. Why is it dangerous? It's associated with coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes mellitus, and even cancers. Cancer of the breast and cervix, of the ovary in females, cancer of the prostate in males. So if we can reduce visceral fat, we are doing a big thing. You'll notice that subcutaneous fat is much easier to reduce, and you can see that both in the yoga and the diet control group, there was a reduction. So this is, how does yoga act? This is the mechanism. Making correct food choices by its action on the hypothalamus. So let's move on, and we'll see some other aspects. Of course, pain is another very important aspect which can be regulated. Stress causes pain, particularly back pain, headache, tension headache, and we can manage it. But I'm going to go to workplace stress, particularly 3 examples. School teachers. Very often this is not rewarding. I was talking to these 450 teachers who were deputed to Patanjali Yogpeeth. They said they had to stand long hours, they had to talk loudly, strain on the vocal cords, and they felt that it was not always being rewarded or respected sufficiently. Can yoga reduce their stress? We found that the answer was yes, and that is currently under process to be published in the journal called Work. Another big industry in India is the IT industry. So we looked at 200 software professionals, randomized them as 2 groups, 100 in each group, a yoga group, a control group, follow them up for 2 months, and found the following differences: reduced anxiety in the yoga group, reduced stress on the body, decrease in visual strain and musculoskeletal strain. And these are the journals where we've published it. You're welcome to write to me for any of them. Another totally different occupation is army personnel. Now, this is an army base very close to Patanjali Yogpith. We were approached by the people there and said that the army personnel here have to stay here for a certain while, and they have to suddenly, they are told within 45 minutes, pack your kit and go to an area of active combat. They never know when they'll have to pack their kit. So they're very, very alert, hyper aroused. They can't sleep. They're anxious. They're depressed. Another group, the Border Security Force personnel. You see our founder, revered Swami Ramdevji, training 2024 in 2 batches each of the Border Security Force. We were asked to produce a yoga module which does 2 things. Allows the people to be alert, that is acting maybe through the RAS, reticular activating system, the locus ceruleus system, we don't know, but relaxed. How is it possible? Because normally when you're alert, you're aroused. So can we do it? To cut a long story short, we were able to do it, and we have 2 publications which you can see here. We did a 3-arm trial. We compared yoga with classical music and just sitting. Now I come to another area. Stress is also experienced by older people. As a person reaches retirement, they start feeling there's very little for them to do. Sometimes they are a little unwell. Their children have gone away. How do they cope with stress? So we did a 3-arm randomized controlled trial. Let me describe it. We had yoga, Ayurveda, and a waitlist control. Study them at baseline, 3 months and 6 months. What were the benefits? Yoga especially reduced feeling of sadness. That's the geriatric depression scale. Improved the quality of sleep based on polysomnography. That is a whole night monitoring of the brain waves. The gait and balance through a variety of tests, the memory and lung functions. Older people often suffer from respiratory tract infections because of deterioration in their lung functions. Our most recent publications in the book brought out by the University of California, Los Angeles, Oxford University Press, describes 2 aspects: effect of yoga for healthy aging and effect of Ayurveda. Moving on. I'm actually going very quickly because I don't want to take you all up. Now, apart from the effects, we also look at individual practices. Each and every asana, each and every pranayama. I'm just going to give you one example. Anulom Vilom Pranayama, alternate nostril breathing. How many of you know this? Quite a number. There has been an idea that it brings about balance. Balance between what? Sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. That is the fight and flight and rest and digest. The left half of the brain and the right half of the brain. Where the left half of the brain is logical, analytical, and the right half of the brain is creative, intuitive, art appreciation. Is it really so? The gist of the next slide is that we did not find such a balance. Here we did brain mapping, high density EEG, and what we found, it's recently been published in BMC Research Notes 2017, and what we found is that after Anulom Vilom Pranayama, there is a slowing of the EEG, but it is associated with better performance in attention tasks, it's published here, with lower blood pressure. So slower EEG, lower blood pressure, but better attention. Isn't that an ideal combination? All of you students should try it if that's what we would want you to have. Better attention without strain. So I'm moving on. I think I'm almost at the end, really. I'm coming to an extreme form of stress. Okay, these are the meditation techniques we've studied. We've also looked at OM and FA, which was spoken of earlier, and linked them with concepts from the Bhagavad Gita, that is like Chanchalata state, Ekagrata state, and from the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Dharana, Dhyana state. So we tried to link them as well as these meditations using evoked potentials as well as fMRI. For the shortage of time, I'm not going to go into it, but I'm going to touch on an area which we have studied on 2 occasions, yoga and post-traumatic stress disorder. One was in the Andaman Islands. Do some of you remember there was a tsunami in the Andaman Islands? Anyone? Yes? And so there we found people were very hyper aroused. The sound or sight of the sea made them very anxious. Much later, after I came to Patanjali, about 10 years ago, we actually went to Bihar. And there, every year, whenever there's rain, the Koshi river overflows. So those people are not hyper aroused, they are depressed. They say whenever it rains, this is going to happen, and we lose a house and we are made to stay here. No one takes care of us, and their PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, took the form of depression. We used yoga to activate them and published that in the year 2010 in BMC Psychiatry. The yoga module for anxiety is completely different from the yoga module for depression. Now, can we use yoga as a therapy? The answer is yes. But I want you to remember it's a holistic picture. We have to have the philosophical principles of yoga, which are there in the Vedas, which are there in the Bhagavad Gita, which are there in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Importance of adding theory to practice. We had 300 people who were extremely anxious. We divided them as 2 groups, 150 each. And we gave one group only theory, one group only practice. And we found that both groups, it reduced anxiety, though the reduction was better with practice alone. And this was published in 2009. So, what do we say in conclusion? Yoga has many health benefits, right? These are the references. We've got many publications. But finally, I want to always end with this slide. Yoga is beyond the physical. It takes us to the spiritual realm, which is not dependent on any one belief system, but is inclusive of all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your valuable thoughts on the importance of yoga theory practice to reduce anxiety and many other benefits. Now it's time for the queries. If any of the student or any of the delegates are having any query, they can ask Shirley, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. Very good morning, ma'am. My question to you is, what is the qualitative application of yoga in current time? In current time, in the present scenario.
In the current qualitative, please explain your question again.
I repeat, what are the qualitative applications of yoga in current time?
Qualitative, well, it's to understand how a person feels. There are 2 things. Quantitative is where you get an actual number. You put a person in a machine, like a fMRI scanner, and you're able to say how much activated. Qualitative is where you talk to the person. So when you say what is the qualitative application, it's a little difficult to understand what you mean, but it helps us to understand what people are feeling. It helps in counseling.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. It is said that you should do yoga and meditation daily. Okay, ma'am. So I know what is yoga and meditation, but what is basic difference between these both, and which is more beneficial? It is yoga or meditation, and how these
Actually, yoga and meditation are synonymous with each other.
Yeah, ma'am.
When one does an asana, for example, you're doing the headstand.
Okay.
If you can reach a very quiet mental state, where you are totally absorbed in your body and you're not distracted. Suppose someone opens the door and shuts the door. You're not distracted.
Got your point, ma'am.
Then you are doing the asana in a meditative mood. If you're able to do Anulom Vilom, again, someone does something outside or you can hear loud noise, but you're not distracted. That means you're doing pranayama in a meditative mood. All practices can be done in a meditative mood. It doesn't mean you have to sit separately. Though there are meditative practices, like we know Brahma Kumaris, we have a respected person who's going to speak here. I have done studies on Brahma Kumaris myself. But any yoga practice, it could be a kriya, it could be an asana, it could be pranayama, anything, we can do our work in a meditative mood. When you're in college, if you're not tight and holding your pen and waiting for the class to end, and you're already thinking, I'll go home and what I'll do. If you're living in the present, if you're mindful and aware, that is meditation.
So we can do both the things together.
You have to be aware, have to live in the present minute. When you're here, you should not be thinking, now in an hour's time I'll be at home.
It means focused. The core
Not
becomes-
less focused, yes, but no effort.
Got your point, ma'am. Yeah.
Very
you so
relaxed.
much. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank